Okay, Shash. We are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 10. Text for today is text 17, 18, and 19. Shashwan, if you can start with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya and then read text 17, please. Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaymutirayet Nashtaprayeshva Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. Sita Patram Jagraha Muktadama Vibhusitam Ratnadandam Gudakesa Priya Priya Tamasyaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Kumar Prabhuji, are you able to do the word to word of text 17?
Should I read it?
Thank you, Mataji.
Or Shashwan? Okay.
Sita Atapatram,
Sita Patram
soothing umbrella.
Soothing umbrella.
Jagraha,
Jagraha
took up.
took up.
Look,
Muktatama,
Muktadama
decorated with laces and pearls.
decorated with laces and pearls.
Vibhusidam,
Vibhushitam
embroidered.
embroidered.
Ratnadandam,
Ratnadandam
with a handle of jewels.
with a handle of jewels.
Kudakesa,
Udakesha,
Arjuna, the expert warrior, or one who has conquered sleep.
Arjuna, the expert warrior, or one who has conquered sleep.
Priyaha,
Priyaha,
most beloved.
most beloved.
Priyatamasya,
Priyatamasya,
of the most beloved.
of the most beloved.
Ha,
Ha,
so he did.
so he did.
text 18. Udava Satyakishchaiva Vyajane Parama Bhute Vikriyamana Kushumai Reje Madhupati Pati. Hare Krishna. I'll read the word to word. Udhava, a cousin brother of Krishna's, Satyaki, his driver, Cha, and Eva, certainly, Vyachane, engaged in fanning, Parama Adbhute, decorative, Vikriya Manaha, seated on scattered, Kusumaya, flowers all around, Reje, commanded, Madhupati, the master of Madhu, Krishna, Pati, on the road. Hare Krishna. We are now on text 19, Canto 1, Chapter 10, text 19. Would anybody like to read text 19? Okay, Prabhuji, you can read text 19.
That's me, is it? Sorry, did I miss? Ashruyanta sisha satyas tatra tatra juyarditaha nanurupascha nirgunasya gunatmanaha asrushanta
Shushanta,
being heard.
being heard.
Ashiha
Ashiha,
benediction.
benediction.
Satya
Satya,
all truths.
all truths.
Tatra
Tatra,
here.
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 Tatra
Tatra,
there.
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 Dvija irataha,
Vija
Vijaya
irataha,
iradaha,
sounded by learned Brahmins.
sounded by
sounded by
learned
learned
Brahmanas.
Brahmins.
Na,
Na,
not.
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 Anurupa,
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 befitting.
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 Anurupa,
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 fitting.
fitting.
Cha,
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 also.
also.
Nirgunanasya,
nirgunasya,
Nirgunanas,
of the absolute.
of
of
the
the
absolute.
absolute.
Guna atmanaha,
Guna
Guna
atmanaha,
playing the role of a human being.
playing the role of a
playing the
human
role of
being.
the human being.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, and Goja Kidogo, I think the sound's a bit low. Is that better?
Yes, Prabhuji, it's
Okay, so,
perfect.
sorry about that. I adjusted it earlier and I forgot to adjust it back. Translation. It was being heard here and there that the benedictions being paid to Krishna were neither befitting nor unbefitting, because they were all for the Absolute, who was now playing the part of a human being. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. At places, there were sounds of Vedic benediction aiming at the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. The benedictions were fitting in the sense that the Lord was playing the part of a human being, as if a cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthir. But they were also unfitting because the Lord is absolute and has nothing to do with any kind of material relativities. He is nirguna, or there are no material qualities in him, but he is full of transcendental qualities. In the transcendental world, there is nothing contradictory, whereas in the relative world, everything has its opposite. In the relative world, white is the opposite conception of black, but in the transcendental world, there is no distinction between white and black. Therefore, the sounds of benedictions uttered by the learned Brahmins here and there appear to be contradictory in relation with the absolute person. But when they are applied to the absolute person, they lose all contradiction and become transcendental. One example may clear this idea. Lord Sri Krishna is sometimes described as a thief. He is very famous amongst his pure devotees as Makanchora. He used to steal butter from the houses of neighbors at Vrindavan in his early age. Since then, he is famous as a thief. But in spite of his being famous as a thief, he is worshipped as a thief. Whereas in the mundane world, a thief is punished and is never praised. Since he is the absolute personality of Godhead, everything is applicable to him. And still, in spite of all contradictions, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. Jai. Omagana Timaranda Shaganangana Shalakaya Chakra Unmilitamjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So that's one example. Makanchor, the thief, the butter thief. Can anyone think of another example where Krishna is described that is something mundane, that is considered to be mundane, but actually it's something we worship and we glorify? There are many examples. Can anybody think of any other? I'm not trying to catch you out. I'm trying to think of some myself. Like one that I can think of is Ranchor. You all know the name Ranchor. He was what? What is Ranchor? He's a coward. He ran away from the battle. So he's considered to be a coward. And in so many ways, there are so many contradictions, apparent contradictions, within the personality of Krishna. But we see things. This is why we need to follow Shastra, we need to follow Guru, we need to follow instruction from Shastra. The Guru must be in line with Shastra, the Shastra must be in line with the Guru, and the whole combination must be in line with the Sadhu Sangha, the previous acharyas, what has been said before. And when all three are in line, then we can understand this is the absolute truth. From so many points of view, it can appear to be contradictory in so many ways, because we're conditioned. That's our nature. We are spiritually, we are pure, transcendental, and we are beyond the material conception of life. But because of our conditioning, because we're encased in these bodies, then of course we see things from so many different perspectives. Not all of them are on the absolute platform. Sometimes we hit the perfect, complete, absolute platform. Most of the time we don't. So one of the descriptions here, as we've already read in the first verse, in verse 17, is Krishna is described as Gudakesh. Arjuna, is described as Gudakesh, the conqueror of sleep. And I was looking up that verse before we spoke in the Bhagavad Gita, and if we see the purport, it's in chapter 1, verse 24 of the Gita. Prabhupada says in the purport, in this verse, Arjuna is referred to as Gudakesh. Gudaka means sleep, and one who conquers sleep is called Gudakesh. Sleep also means ignorance. Unfortunately, in our case, it means ignorance, because when we're asleep, basically at night, for the most part, most of us sleep at night, then we completely forget what we were doing during the day. We completely forget even our own identity, our own name, nationality, religion. Everything is, boom, gone, completely gone. So Prabhupada goes on to say, so Arjuna conquered both sleep and ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. As a great devotee of Krishna, he could not forget Krishna even for a moment, because that is the nature of a devotee. Either in waking or in sleep, a devotee of the Lord can never be free from thinking of Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. So that, of course, is Arjuna. Prabhupada uses this example so many times in so many lectures, also in his books, that at night, when we're sleeping, we can imagine that we're a great big king sitting on a throne, being fanned and worshipped by so many royal courtiers and ministers and so on, and being feigned on, and people are playing curtsy. Or we can imagine in a dream, this is the exact example that Prabhupada gives. We can imagine in a dream we're being attacked by a tiger. The tiger is just about to pounce and devour us. And then suddenly, we wake up and we realize, oh no, I'm in my bed, I'm asleep. I'm not being attacked by a tiger. But the reactions that we get when we're actually in that tamagun state, when we're in that state of ignorance, is that it is real. We believe it. We're convinced. When you're attacked by a tiger, you're in a frightened condition, your heart is palpitating, and you wake up in a fear and in a fright. If the dream manages to wake you up, sometimes the dream is so severe, we wake up and we're almost at the point of death in the dream. But there we are lying supposedly peacefully in our bed, but what's going on in our mind? So when we're in that dream, in the jungle, being attacked by a tiger or being worshipped as a king or whatever it might be, then we're convinced that that's real. Otherwise, why do we react in such a way? Like a drowning man grabbing at a straw. If a drowning man tries to grab at a straw, what is the use? It's completely useless. But that is our reality for that point of time in the dream. Similarly, this is our reality in our waking state. We're convinced because we're in another kind of a dream that I am this body, I am this person, I belong to this society, this society and friendship and love and country and nationality and position and job and status and everything. That belongs, that is me. But what about when you're in the dream state? Like Prabhupada again gives the example. I don't know if he uses this exact figure, but he gives this exact example. If someone lives to be, say, 90 years old, which is considered an old person in this day and age, according to the Shastra, someone in the age of Kali lives to be 100. That's considered to be old. In previous yugas, in the last yuga, it was 1,000. Before that, it was 10,000. And before that, it was 100,000. But in this age now, because of diminished time, someone who lives to be 100 is considered to be, well, give the example. Prabhupada gives the example that someone lives to be 90 years old. On average, we sleep 8 hours a day, an average. Some sleep more, some sleep less. Let's take 8 hours as the average. That is 1/3 of the day out of 24 hours. So if you live to be 90 and you sleep an average of 8 hours a day, of course, as a child, you sleep more. Then you actually sleep for 30 years. 30 years in this same body. So for 30 years of that 90 years, we are complete and totally in ignorance. That's guaranteed. I mean, for most of the time, when we're awake, we're also in ignorance, but it's guaranteed that for 30 of the 1/3 of our lives are totally in ignorance. Now, out of those remaining 60 years that we spend supposedly conscious and awake, how much time do we spend in total ignorance? We spend the first 20 years of our life in school, right? That's 40 years remaining. And you take 15, 20 minutes, half an hour a day in the bath, taking a shower. How many years is that? How many years do we spend brushing our teeth? How many years do we spend doing all kinds of nonsense things? Add them all up. How much time is actually left out of that 90 years when we were actually conscious of who we are, conscious of our relationship with God, conscious of our relationship with Krishna? Very few. So we go through these motions of imagining ourselves to be something that we're not, and we never were, and we never will be. As soon as this body is finished, and all these different consciousness that we identify with at certain parts in our life, when we're young, of course, when we're teenager, when we're in their 20s or 30s, and then we go on through life, then we have different priorities in life. That is natural. But now, as we're getting into the later stages of our life, for instance, I have a completely different consciousness in terms of my identity of who I am to Shashwat, who's a much younger person than me. That is normal. But, to what extent are we developing our relationship with God? To what extent are we developing our relationship with Krishna? And how much time out of this valuable human form of life, 8,400,000 different species of life, that we have gone through countless, unbelievably countless millions of times over and over and over again, and gone through the human form of life so many times, and gone through so many different species of life so many times. And now we have reached this human form of life at this particular point in time, when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet, when Srila Prabhupada came to New York in 1965 and started ISKCON in 1966, and from there spread this movement all over the world. And at this point in time, we have the possibility, the opportunity to connect with that Shakti, to connect directly with that Shakti, and forget everything that has gone before. As Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said in his famous poem, "Forget the past that sleeps, and ne'er the future dream at all, but act in times that are with thee, and progress thee shall call." And that's such a beautiful poem. I mean, all of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's poems are just so beautiful. I would recommend that we all read them at least once a week. Try and get a hold of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's poems or his songs, or any part of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings, and just pick up and read one paragraph. Just look at that one verse from that poem. Forget the past that sleeps. The past is gone. It's not going to come back. We can't even bring back yesterday. It just simply isn't possible. And ne'er the future dream at all, but act in times that are with thee, and progress thee shall call. So the future I've no control over. The past I can't bring it back. Whatever I've done previously, I've done. It's gone. It's finished. I deal with it, whether it was good, whether it was bad. Make amends, make retribution for whatever faults we may have engaged in. But now we have the present. We have the here and now. This is what we have. And this is what we deal with. So it's whatever we make of that here and now, that is to our credit. And if we again squander that here and now, because we're just living from moment to moment. From the time we started this class at 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock your time, we can't bring that time back. That time is gone and it will never come back. So we have this here and now. So to what extent are we engaged in discovering who I am? What is my original identity? What is my original connection with the supreme absolute truth? Prabhupada says in that that ignorance, Gudakesh, the conqueror of sleep, when we are in ignorance, then we have nowhere to go, absolutely nowhere to go. We can't do anything. So how do we get out of this ignorance? Yesterday was a Kadashi, of course. I don't know if it was a Kadashi in Kenya, but here in UK it was a Kadashi yesterday. We observed a Kadashi. And one devotee friend of mine from Ireland sent me this lecture from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, who's discussing the different aspects of Ekadashi. And one section from that, this was printed in The Harmonist, a magazine that was inaugurated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada's Gurudev, his spiritual master. This was printed in 1932. And he says there, the holy name of Krishna means the divine sound. It can be compared to a capsule of medicine. The capsule is not the medicine. Externally, one capsule may look like another, but within one capsule, there may be medicine, and within another capsule, there may be cyanide. The capsule itself is not the medicine. It is not the sound of Krishna's name that is Krishna. Krishna is within the sound. The holy name must be surcharged with the proper spirit, not any mundane sentiment. The divine sound of the holy name must have its origin beyond the area of misconception or maya. We have to understand, and this is me speaking, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he wrote on a very, very high level of English, very, very high. It's like when we're doing our studies here in secondary school and university, of course, in English language or literature. I don't know about you, but we studied Chaucer and Shakespeare and all these ancient writers from the medieval period, and particularly Chaucer, who's over 1,000 years ago, when he wrote the famous Canterbury Tales. I have a copy of Canterbury Tales on my bookshelf, and I have the original and I have the translation. And the original was written in English, but it needs a translation in order to be able to read it today. Even though it was written in English, pure high-level English, impossible to read. I did English literature in school, and my knowledge of English is fairly reasonable. I can't read a word of Canterbury Tales in the original, not a single word, and it's written in English. So you need a translation from the original English to translate it into, same with Shakespeare. We need translations from Shakespeare to be able to read Shakespeare in today's English. So even the time when my parents were going to school, and the English of today is completely different. The time when I was going to school and the English of today is very different. So many things have been added to the language. So the language changes. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's English language was on such a high level. Prabhupada himself said, I used to just sit there, even though I didn't understand what he was saying, because something would eventually reach my brain and I would be able to understand. So because the devotees, they came to Prabhupada, they had found a copy of Brahma Samhita that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj wrote the purports to. As you know, the Brahma Samhita was found in South India by one disciple, one devotee of Mahaprabhu, and he brought the copy to, it was written on a palm leaf, a section of the Brahma Samhita, the section that we have today. Brahma Samhita is many thousands of verses, but they sound what we have today. They found that particular section. And they brought it to Mahaprabhu, and they wanted to know from Mahaprabhu, is this real? And Mahaprabhu read it. He said, yes, this is the original, printed and send it everywhere. So all the devotees of Mahaprabhu, they copied it. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he wrote purports on this, just like Prabhupada writes purports in the Bhagavatam that we read every day. But again, very, very high level English, almost impossible for us as ordinary mortals to understand or even appreciate. So the devotees, they found this copy when they started traveling to India with Prabhupada, and they brought to Prabhupada and they said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, or would you kindly rewrite the purports so as we can understand what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj is writing? Prabhupada said, no. Why? How can I add? How can I improve on what my spiritual master has written? Prabhupada said, eventually, when you become more and more and more purified, you will understand. The same with our Shastras, with our scriptures, with our Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. The more we delve into it, the more we will understand, the more we will appreciate. There's no need to get academic about it. It all comes from within the heart, ultimately. Krishna is speaking to us from within the heart. So I just wanted to give that little bit of an aside before I continue reading what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj has written in the Harmonist in 1932. It may seem a little bit high level for us, but when we hear it, then eventually it will come to us within the heart and we will begin to appreciate. The sound must have its origin in Goloka Vrindavan. The mere physical sound is not the holy name of Krishna. Repeating only the syllables of the holy name is called mayic sound. It has no spiritual essence. The life of the name is absent in offensive chanting. The most important thing in chanting the holy name is the spiritual realization backing the name. The spiritual realization backing the name. That is the real name. You cannot capture the holy name of Krishna simply vibrating the syllables of the holy name with your tongue. Now, I can speak for myself in this regard. Most of the time, I have to be honest, my mind is blank. I don't have a single academic or intelligent thought in my head. I just go through the whole of my life like there's a balloon there between my ears or a piece of cabbage. There's nothing functioning on an intellectual level until I pick up my bead bag in the morning to chant my rounds. Then the whole world just floods into my head. All kinds of nonsense come into my head. I remember, oh, I didn't do this. I remember, oh, I have to do that. And, oh, I forgot to do this yesterday. All kinds of rubbish every day. Otherwise, my life is very calm and peaceful and kind of normal. But when I pick up my bead bag and I try to engage with the holy names of Krishna, boom, Maya immediately attacks. What is it the 10 offenses we chant every morning after Mangal Arati? It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. And if we claim to be a Vaishnava, we must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, which is, I'm asking, what is that desired success? Krishna Prem. Exactly. Krishna Prem. This is the way. We're not going to do it by shnik, shnik, ram, ram, shnik, shnik, ram, ram. It doesn't work like that. We have to actually engage with our beads, Engage with the mantra, engage with the chanting. Yes, avoid all the other offenses, of course. And we know them, we list them every day. There's no need to go through them now. But that last one, it is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. And what do we have to do to avoid that? We have to keep dragging the mind back, because the mind is going wandering in all directions, just like it does when we're having these nightmares or dreams at night, imagining so many different things. It's the same in the day. It's not that it's any different in the day. We're imagining that we are this person and we have this position and we have this status in life and we have to take care of that. No. When we're chanting our rounds, we have to be chanting our rounds. Nothing else. Not going snick, 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 and then the phone is in the ear, snick, 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 snick. It doesn't work. It does not work. It is actually an offense. So how on earth are we going to get the benefit of Krishna Nam if we're actually committing offense while engaging in the process, which is going to take us out of this Mayic atmosphere? We can't. It's like pouring water on the fire. It doesn't work. And it's not like that. We're saying these things just to make everybody feel guilty. That's not the point. What's the point of guilt? It's useless. But we have to take this opportunity now. Right here and now. Forget the past that sleeps, and ne'er the future dream at all, but act in times that are with thee, and progress thee shall call. This is it. This is the key. It's there on every page of the books. But if we just go through the motions of, as I said last week, just attending the morning program and going through the motions and going through the ritual and offering the puja and offering the incense and the diwa, but we have to put our heart into it. This is where we get the benefit. Krishna is coming from Goloka Vrindavan, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj is describing in that small extract I just read. He's coming from Goloka Vrindavan and he is dancing on our tongue. Krishna is dancing on our tongue. It's Krishna that's making your lips move. It's Krishna that's making your tongue move. Krishna is giving you the ability. I'm the ability in man. That doesn't come from you. But when you connect, why is Lord Chaitanya saying, Lord Chaitanya, I mean, this is coming from Lord Chaitanya. He's Krishna himself, right? Coming in the role of a devotee. We understand that. But here's Krishna himself saying, I do not understand what ecstasy, what bliss, what knowledge, what absolute and total bliss is contained between the two syllables, Krishna. Lord Chaitanya himself is saying, I don't understand. I can't, it's inconceivable to me. So here's God himself saying he doesn't understand. How is it that so much bliss and knowledge can be contained within the two syllables Krishna? This is a direct quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the Lord himself doesn't understand the bliss of contained in the holy names, his own names. So and when we just bypass it and we go through the 16 rounds that we chant, whatever number of rounds we have vowed to chant is up to the individual. But whatever number of rounds we have vowed to chant, so we just go through the motions of chanting it. Oh, I've only got 2 left now. And it's gone. Yeah, well, I've done my rounds. Throw the bead bag in the corner and forget about it till tomorrow. Well, yes, okay, that's good. Nobody is criticizing that. That is wonderful that we've taken that first step. But why would we want to leave ourselves out? Why would we sit down at the table to eat the meal and just look at the food and walk away? What's the point? Prabhupada says, like licking the outside of the jar of honey. If you can lick the outside of the jar of honey all day long, will you ever know what honey tastes like by licking the outside of the jar? Of course we won't. So we have to take this chanting seriously. We really do. If we don't take the chanting seriously, what hope is there? Again, another, if you will excuse me, another verse that we chant every day, Shikshastakam. Again, after Mangal Arti, we I can speak for myself here. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. We go through the motions. Who's going to be the quickest to get the Shikshastakam out of the way so as we can get on with our life? The main objective is to get it out of the way. That's not the objective. The objective is to take cognizance of what it is we are saying. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. All your Namnamakari Bahodani Disharva Shaktis. You have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. This is Mahaprabhu speaking. This is not Vidura. This is Lord Chaitanya himself speaking. So then what does he go on to say in the third verse? Tridandapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina amanidena kitanya sadahari. Well, this is the criteria. This is how we gain entry into the bliss of the chanting of the holy name. Lord Chaitanya is giving us a secret. This is the key. Use this key, unlock the door, and you're in Goloka Vrindavan. That's it. It's as simple as that. Just open the door. Open the doors to your heart, the song says, and let Govinda in. That's all we need. Just open the doors to your heart. Don't approach it like an academic, like some kind of a philosophical treatise. How many examples are we given? We know from Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya was in South India and he came across that devotee in front of the temple who was reading the Bhagavad Gita. He didn't have a clue. He was illiterate, didn't know how to read. And Lord Chaitanya, what are you doing? People were laughing at him, joking about him, making fun of him, so on and so forth. Why do you do this? Why do you sit in front of the temple all day? People are just ridiculing you constantly. My spiritual master instructed me to read Bhagavad Gita every day. Unfortunately, I'm a fool. I don't know how to read. I'm illiterate. But my spiritual master instructed me. And Lord said, but you don't read, you can't read. And yet I see you sitting here with the Bhagavad Gita in your hand, floods of tears coming out of your eyes. What inspires these tears? He said, well, I just think from hearing about Bhagavad Gita that Krishna, he agreed to be Arjuna's chariot driver. He became the servant of Arjuna. And when I think that Krishna has become the servant of his devotee, tears of ecstasy and Lord Chaitanya embraced him. He said, you are the most wonderful devotee. You are way above everybody else that I've met in my tour. So you see, it's nothing to do with being academic or intellectual or being an erudite scholar or anything like this, or knowing the shlokas, or being able to recite this, that, and the other backwards or inside out. Anytime I need to say something, I have to look it up in the book. I have to do a little research. I don't have all this stuff in my head. It doesn't come from me, it comes from Krishna. So what is this criteria that we're speaking of? In number 3, one should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind. Number 1, a humble state of mind, humility. This is the criteria. Number 1, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street, lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. And what is that verse in Bhagavad Gita that describes constantly? Satatam kirtiyanto mam yatantascha drida namasyantyascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upashyate. I know I keep quoting it. It's one of my favorite verses. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. This is the secret. We don't need to be big scholars to do anything in Krishna consciousness. We simply have to open the doors to your heart and let Govinda in. This is what inspires us. And then when we begin to get that taste, that ruchi, that taste of Krishna consciousness, there's no going back. There is no going back. And then what happens when you get that taste? You just want to give it to others because you want to share it, because it's something wonderful and glorious and absolutely out of this world, literally out of this world. So we just want to share it with everyone. But first of all, we have to share it with ourselves. We have to be good to ourselves. Why should we be miser? Nobody wants to be kripana. Nobody wants to have the reputation of being a miser. But if we're being miserly with ourselves, then what's the point? Why are we going through the motions of, this devotional? Is it a career? What is it? Is it some kind of, position in the society where people will say, oh yes, I'm a devotee, or I'm not, or I'm this, or I'm that, or the other? It's pointless unless we go for the essence, go for the real thing, stick with it, stay with it. Everything will be perfect. Everything will fall into place. Nothing is beyond our reach. There's one purport Prabhupada is saying. Prabhupada gave a lecture in March 1976 in Mayapur, where Prabhupada is speaking of what does it take to surrender. And in that part of that lecture, it's a very long lecture, it's over an hour long, wonderful lecture. If you remain a pure devotee, always surrender to Krishna. You should know it very well that Krishna will give you the protection in any calamity. Don't be worried. Simply, we must have the faith. That is surrender. He gave that lecture, and it was earlier that morning before Mangalarti. Prabhupada had decided, you must remember this is 1976, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was in charge of the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party. They had 14 buses traveling all over America. And there were book distribution parties. They used to go to all the libraries, Library of Congress, all the universities. They were trained up to perfection. 14 buses cover the entire United States. I was the pujari for the deities, Radha Damodar. They're now in Gita Nagari permanently. They were their installed deities. So they would go from town to town, city to city, all over America. It was huge. And I read the pastime the other day on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is a big celebration in America. They did Chicago Airport on the Thanksgiving Day. And they distributed, the average was 400, 500 books a day. That was a big score. We're talking about big books, Bhagavatams, distributing 400 or 500 Bhagavatams. On that particular Thanksgiving Day, they did 2,400 Bhagavatams in Chicago Airport. They were caught by the police, they were thrown out, they came back and they fought, and so many obstacles. And they wrote a letter to Prabhupada explaining, Prabhupada was so happy to hear that they distributed those books. But anyway, a year later in Mayapur, the next Mayapur festival, Prabhupada woke up just before Mangalartis, called for his servant Hari Sori, and this is reported in Hari Sori's diary. And he said, where's Tamal Krishna? Tamal Krishna Maharaj was the one heading up this traveling Sankirtan party with all these 14 buses of brahmacharis going out all over the country. It was huge, absolutely huge. In those days in America, ISKCON was absolutely massive everywhere. So Prabhupada said, call for Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Trivikram and Guru Kripa. So he could only find Trivikram Maharaj, and Guru Kripa Swami couldn't find Tamal Krishna because he'd already gone into the temple for Mangalarti. So Prabhupada says, I've decided that Tamal has to go to China. He has to go tomorrow. So when eventually they found Tamal Krishna, he was like absolutely aghast because he was the one heading up this. He started this 14 buses program. They started off with one bus. Prabhupada even traveled on those buses. He traveled on one of the buses, I remember, because I did the interviews for the Leela Amrita. The devotees traveled from New York to Gitanagari Farm in Pennsylvania by bus. Prabhupada traveled on the bus. So that was an amazing Leela. But here Prabhupada saying, no, go to China. I want you to. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he had so many excuses, and this will happen, and the program will collapse. And everybody knew the book distribution was very dear to Prabhupada's heart. It was the main number one objective. Prabhupada said, no, I don't care. You go to China and start something in China. It's a big opportunity. It's a huge country. We have no men there. And so Tamal had so many excuses. Trivikram Swami supported Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Guru Kripa supported Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Finally, Prabhupada got angry. His lip was quivering. And he said, I order you to go to China. You either go to China or you sit here in Mayapur forever and chant Hare Krishna. So then he knew Prabhupada was serious. So he said, okay, Prabhupada, I bow down. I'm going to China immediately. So that morning at the Bhagavatam class, Prabhupada gave this lecture to reiterate what he had said earlier on. Now all his anger was gone. His disciple had surrendered. Prabhupada says, if you remain a pure devotee, always surrender to Krishna, you should know it very well that Krishna will give you protection in any calamity. Calamity. Don't be worried. Simply we must have faith. That is surrender. You must be faithful that, Prabhupada quote, I am engaged in Krishna's service. I may go to hell. I may go to heaven. It doesn't matter. I'm going to serve him. It is sure that Krishna will give me protection. Masu Chaha, you know that verse, 1866. So there should be no hesitation. If somebody is ordered, go to hell and preach Krishna consciousness, he should remain faithful to Krishna, and Krishna will give him all protection. This is the principle. This is what Prabhupada is saying. On the same morning, he gave that Bhagavatam class to reiterate. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he didn't eventually go to China. He went after Prabhupada left the world, after Prabhupada's departure. And he established big preaching in China, but not during that particular time. Prabhupada let him stay. So, but he did make the effort. He was on his way to China. He stopped off in Hawaii, where Prabhupada happened to be visiting. And Prabhupada says, no, it's okay. You continue with your Radha Damodar preaching program. And he did. But he was willing to surrender. That was the point. But here Prabhupada is saying, you go to heaven, you go to hell, it doesn't matter. I am going to serve him, Krishna. I am going to serve him. So it doesn't matter where the devotee goes. And Prabhupada is speaking here, of course, if you remember the first sentence, if you remain a pure devotee, always surrender to Krishna. So what is this term pure devotee? I mean, that's a whole different discussion. We think, oh, I'm not a pure devotee. It doesn't apply to me. Of course it applies to you. Why are you not a pure devotee? What's holding you back? What's holding me back? Why do I come up with this excuse? Oh, I'm not a pure devotee. No, that doesn't work. That, this pure devotee business applies only to the gurus or the sannyasis or the GBCs or this one or that one. No. This is my objective. Become a pure devotee. And this can happen, Prabhupada said in a lecture in Melbourne, Prabhupada said, it can happen in a second. We just have to desire it, as we were discussing earlier. It has to come from the heart. Krishna doesn't dance on your tongue and move your tongue, move your lips by chanting your Maha Mantra every day on your Japa Mala if you're not there. If you're not present, how can Krishna be present? Like I see some devotees, this is not a criticism, it's just an observation. I see some devotees walking around, particularly in the holy dam, they got their beads around their neck and they're chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if your beads are outside your bead bag, the Bhutas, they get the benefit. The Bhutas, the Rakshasas, they get the benefit. You don't get the benefit. Beads should be covered, just like we cover the thread when we're chanting Gayatri. Why? It's for our benefit. It's an internal process. Yes, there's an external aspect to it. We've got the bead bag, we've got the beads, we've got the chanting, but we have to internalize our devotional service. We have to internalize our bhakti. It's called sadhana bhakti, sadhana, step by step by step. So now we've been involved and we've been devotees for so many months or weeks or years or whatever it might be. Now is the time to take it seriously. Not tomorrow or next year or maybe or perhaps or if these circumstances fall into place. Prabhupada says, heaven or hell, surrender. So I think I better shut up. I'm getting carried away. So please, if there are any questions or comments, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for giving this nectar. It's so good when we hear all the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada and how he was so determined. And thank you for reminding us how much time we are wasting. And if we lived for 90 years, I think most of us, at least me, have wasted most of the time that I've lived so far. So thank you very much for that reminder and putting it so succinctly that it has just entered into the mind. Are there any questions or comments by anybody on this group? Any devotees, any questions or any other comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Avinash, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you very much for the class. It was very nice and lots to take back and lots to digest in as well. The question I have is about the beads. You know, when we have a bead bag, and the beads, if initial devotees, quite a lot of initial devotees, they don't have a bead bag with them. They just chant on the, you know, the beads only. So I just wanted to know, actually, if they chant purely on just the beads, I mean, what are the implications of that?
If they chant purely, well, if you chant purely, avoiding the 10 offenses, you go back to Godhead. Bas.
Yeah.
Krisha Maneno.
That's right. And because you mentioned about if it's out, then the ghosts and, you know, they can be.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. Well, you know, this is from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's his instruction. If you chant and your beads are exposed, the Bhutas and the Rakshasas, they take the benefit. That doesn't mean that you don't get any benefit, but the benefit goes to the Bhutas. It's lost. It's your personal devotional creeper that we're concerned with, and who can't get a bead bag? I mean, it's a simple piece of cotton on a string. It's not that difficult. But you know, if somebody is chanting purely, and they're engaged, and they're meditating, fully immersed in the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, of course. But there's a distinction, Prabhu. I'm not trying to contradict you. I understand where you're coming from, but there's a distinction between kirtan and japa. The japa is our personal meditation. It's my meditation on a daily basis to fulfill my vrat, my vow that I gave when I took initiation. I try to fulfill that vow to chant a regulated number of rounds, as Lord Chaitanya did also. So it's and then whereas Harinam Sankirtan, that's for the benefit of the masses, going out chanting, doing Harinam on the street, chanting here and there as we do these days. As you know, the Kirtan party in London on Saturday night is very famous. I mean, many thousands, tens of thousands of people get to hear the holy name. So it's wonderful. There's a benefit there. And the Bhutas also, and the Rakshasas, they also get the benefit. But the Japa Mala, that is a very sacred part of my day that I'm speaking of myself here, that I have to take more and more and more seriously. I can't just discard it and just think I can just go through the motions of producing a sound, and I'm mumbling the sound of Krishna's name, but it's going somewhere else. The sound has to go from the tongue to the ear into the heart, and that cycle, that circle continues. It doesn't go out. If it goes out, it's lost, it's gone, and I can't bring it back. It's just like when we started this lecture at 5 o'clock, then we can't bring back that time. We can't bring back yesterday. Yesterday was a Kaddashi, today is not a Kaddashi. So it's a different time now. We're in a different zone. So when I chant my japa and it's lost, it goes into the ether, but I wasn't connected with that sound vibration, and I didn't have a relationship with it, and I let Krishna go on his way, and I didn't grab him while he was there dancing on my tongue. I just let him go. So that's my loss. There may be rules and regulations and so on and so forth. Forget about the rules and regulations. Get Krishna at any cost. Get Krishna. That's the objective. So if a part of that objective in getting Krishna is to help me, to induce me to make sure that I'm meditating on my japamala, and if a part of that is to hold my beads in a bead bag, then so be it. If it's difficult to do that, I can't see how it would be, but if it is difficult, then we have to try to find a way to get around that problem or that obstacle, if that is an obstacle in our life. I don't see where the difficulty would be in acquiring a bead bag and putting your beads in a bead bag. But perhaps, like if you remember from the time of the 80s, when the devotees were put in prison in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, and they made an appeal, especially the Australian Gurukulis. They made an appeal to the United Nations, and they protested in front of the United Nations to let the devotees free. And Gorbachev, he was the in charge of the Soviet Union at the time. He recognized this protest and he let the devotees go. So the devotees, they were describing to me when I interviewed them after they were free and came to the West, they were describing to me how when they were in prison, they used to make their japamala out of bread. So they'd get little bits of bread and they'd heat it so as it would be hardened, and they'd make a ball out of the bread and they'd make a japamala out of the bread in the prison so as they could chant their rounds. I mean, that was some serious dedication to chanting. The austerities that they went through, many of the devotees, they gave up their life in the gulag, in the prisons in the Soviet Union in Siberia, in order to become devotees, just for the right to practice the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. So many devotees' lives were sacrificed in the former Soviet Union. And here we have difficulty getting a bead bag. I don't know where the answer to that lies. I really don't.
Yes, Prabhu. I think I was mentioning those new devotees who come through first time and they don't have a bead bag, but later on they get a bead bag, no problems.
Yes.
And also other thing I wanted to mention is the standard we have to have of where to keep our beads. You know, we have to put them above the waistline so
Yes.
they don't have to touch the ground. So something
Yes.
like that as well.
Yes. Yes. That's true. I wouldn't be so much caught up in the rules and regulations of where to put the bead bag or even having a bead bag or whatever. I wouldn't like to think that I was diverting anybody's attention from the actual chanting of the holy names of the Lord on your japa mala. This is the main thing, to not let the sound vibration of Krishna's name go into the ether so you don't take advantage of the fact that Krishna is with you dancing on your tongue. And we just let it go. That was my point, not so much about the bead bag. I'm sorry if I diverted attention about the bead bag. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. We have exhausted our time. Are there any other burning questions or comments?
We haven't exhausted our time, Kirtika. I have exhausted everybody else. That's what you're trying to say very politely.
No, Prabhuji, you haven't exhausted us. I think you have enthusiasted us. You've sown the seeds. I'll request Parth Prabhu. Prabhu, is it possible for you to conclude this session? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Vidura Prabhuji, please accept our
Hi,
humble obeisance.
Part Prem Das, Prabhuji, Haribol, Swamiji.
Haribol,
Yes,
Prabhuji, Haribol.
Haribol.
Everything okay, Prabhuji?
Good,
Yes,
good,
yes.
good. Very
Today also
nice.
some devotees from Nairobi, in our temple, they are staying here.
Oh, very
From
nice.
Nairobi, they came. They wait for the Kampala Rath, then they back here staying for a few days.
Oh, I see. Are you
So I
going?
was
Are you also going to Kisumu?
Yeah. We have planned almost 50 people who are coming. 50,
Oh,
55 like that.
wow. Very nice. I wish I was there. I don't understand why Pundarik just gave such a short notice. Otherwise, I would have made arrangements to come. But I only heard about it
Yeah.
last Sunday, so otherwise I could have bought a ticket. But it's Christmas; it's difficult, and so I wish you all the best of luck in the Kisumu Rath Yatra. Please send me some pictures.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, sure, definitely. Thank you,
Jai.
Prabhuji. Thank you.
Jai. Thank you. Haribol.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Your class is so nice and so sober. And what are the preliminary days, like Prabhupada and his disciples are so dedicated so that we are getting the fruit of ISKCON now.
Yes.
And also like 14 buses, they are going here and they are also Padayatra. And
Yes.
also whole day and night, they are distributing the books in the airport, in lounge, and the railway station, bus terminals. So many. Also,
Yes.
lastly, you are talking about the Soviet Union, like that bread, they are making the beat bake on the bread. I read that book, that is so heart touching. That is the
Yeah.
bread and salt
Yes.
and bread, that books.
Yes.
Oh, so many Russians devoted their sacrifice their life in the region for
Yes.
this one. So
Yes.
when we read this one, you can control your fear. And it's so much. I request all the devotees, maybe many devotees, they read that one. And if not, then you can purchase that book. There's so many languages that was written also, different language.
Yes.
It's so nice.
Yeah. It's a wonderful
Really.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, I read that book. And it is very heart touching. And we can see the sacrifice for the Krishna for themselves. And
Yes.
if we compare them, and we are not even minus 50%. Doing the practice of devotional, minus 50%.
Yes.
I also met when I was in India, probably in book distribution time, I met. They from since morning, I think they are wake up at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Before Mangala Arati 4:30, they are finishing their 30 to 40 rounds, 50 rounds like that. Everybody, even Mataji, Prabhuji, small kid. Then they went for the book distribution whole day and whole day without just taking the food and coming after that taking prasad, then go to sleep. Only 2-3 hours sleeping. What a dedication they have.
Very,
Too much.
very
Tremendous.
dedicated. Yes.
We have chance to getting to book distribution many days in Russian devotees or dedication. Oh, wonderful. And really they are so that comparing in India, because we are getting easily everything, temple everywhere, picture everywhere, guru everywhere, books everywhere, all well established everywhere. So we are not taking serious Krishna consciousness.
We have to take it seriously. We don't waste our life. Just don't waste our life.
Yes, stop. Yes, Prabhuji. Yes,
Right.
Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji,
Thank
for your
you.
nice class. So wonderful. You are giving the glimpses of that one so that it is touching our heart. Then we're supposed to be.
Jai, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Also, thanks all the devotee who joined here. I request all the devotee, please unmute yourself and chant Hare Krishna mantra for glorification of His grace. Vidura Prabhuji, please join.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Vancha kalpatarubhya
Rubhyasya kripa sindhubhya eva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Hare Bol.
Vidura Prabhuji,
Ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thanks for the wonderful class. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Hare Bol.